Next up, UNL's Drought Monitor map shows about a third of Nebraska under some level of drought. This as many cattle producers are reducing stocking rates on pastures as the hot temperatures of summer begin to take hold. Nebraska Extension beef educator Berger spoke with Market Journal's Bill Dodd about how producers should approach stocking rate reductions.
As the summer months begin bringing us warmer weather, some cattle producers facing drought conditions across the state may be considering ways to reduce stocking rates in some of their rangeland pastures. When it comes to bringing those numbers down, there are three options producers may want to mull over: either feed, ship, or sell.
Yeah, so I think as we look at the upcoming summer, parts of Nebraska have had good precipitation, others have not. Many are looking at a shorter grass growing season or shorter grass during this upcoming growing season than maybe they would like to have. So one of the things we can think about is some substitute feeding. That's where we're replacing grass we normally would graze with harvested feed. And there's really two options with this. We can feed cattle on pasture. If we're going to do that, introduced grass species like smooth brome are much more resilient to that type of feeding method than something like a native pasture in the sandhills of Nebraska. In substitute feeding, we're going to want to feed both an energy protein with the low quality forage so that the cattle are getting filled up and we're actually replacing a pound of grazed forage with a pound of harvested feed. And this can work well on smooth brome pastures. Again, would probably not recommend this on native grass pastures just because of some of the detrimental impact we can have when feeding, especially on the sandhills in Nebraska during the growing season. If we're thinking about supplemental feeding, we're thinking about a scenario like that where maybe we're in a situation where CRP grazing is opened up because of dry conditions. Then we're providing a protein supplement to complement some of the low quality forage that's there. Oftentimes CRP has not been grazed for a number of years, so there's a lot of older growth, it's less quality, and providing a protein energy supplement on that can actually allow the cattle to take more effective utilization of the feed that's available. So again, we're using some feed that's not our normal native grass or perennial grass pasture that we're using for our summer grazing.
Another alternative would be dry lot feeding cow-calf pairs, the goal of which is to move cattle out of pastures in order to minimize damage to grass plants, leading to better recovery at a faster rate. However, cost could be an issue with this option.
So we think about substitute feeding. If we're thinking about that for the summer, maybe we're looking at a scenario where we're thinking about dry lotting cow-calf pairs for a period of time. Some key things to really think about there is first, what's it going to cost? And harvested feed this year is expensive. And so be very careful about thinking through what's it going to cost me to feed these cows. We're going to need to have ample bunk space. We recommend around 30 inches of bunk space per cow-calf pair if you're feeding in a dry lot scenario. You want to think about those baby calves. How old are they? Make sure they have access to some feed, have good access to water and some shade to make sure their health is not compromised because of a dry lot scenario. At the University of Nebraska, at our beef website, there's a lot of really good resources on dry lotting cows, examples of sample rations, things you need to think through, management strategies. And also we have specialists and educators that can help producers who maybe want to look at different ration options if they're thinking about dry lotting cows for the summer. So those are all resources that are also available that can help people think through the dry lotting cow option as they think about that as a potential for this summer.
If feeding options aren't available, you may consider shipping your cattle. This could be easier said than done with current drought conditions, but there are some advantages to the idea of shipping livestock to another location. On the other hand, there could also be concerns of biosecurity risk with this approach.
I think for this year, that's really going to be a challenge because of how widespread drought conditions are. It's just going to be hard to find pasture in other locations. One caution I would have, if you're going to ship cattle to another location and then bring them back, be careful or be aware of potential diseases that you could be bringing back when those cattle come. Different parts of the country have different parasites, have different diseases than you have on your operations. And also there's an adaptation phase that goes when you ship cattle to another location. So for example, if we took cattle from Nebraska and shipped them south and east of here to a place where maybe we have endophyte infected fescue, those cattle are going to have a harder time adapting and utilizing that well. So I think some caution in place when we think about shipping cattle. Typically young cattle handle that new environment better than older mature cows do, and cow-calf pairs.
Your final option would be selling. There are several variables for producers to review in order to make the most lucrative decision when it comes to which cattle to sell and which to retain.
The other thing we might want to think about is what cattle do we need to sell? And this gets to be a challenging situation, I think, in terms of if you've got a cow herd, which do we keep, which do we sell? I think thinking about what's your business plan, where do you want the operation to go, is important to think through. Hopefully the drought breaks in a year or two, and also we see cattle prices improve. And so if that should occur, you want to think about what classes of cattle do I have today that are going to most allow me to be in a position to take advantage of that going forward. And in my mind, that would be young females right now, replacement heifers, 2 and 3 year olds, and even heifer calves at side right now on a cow. And so those would be ones I'd be thinking about, how do we want to maintain or maybe position myself to have those so that when the drought breaks, I can then take advantage of the expected increased calf prices that we have when selling calves.
As temperatures continue to climb this summer, these could be your best options for reducing stocking rates. Keeping these things in mind could help you maintain flexibility and take advantage of what could be better prices on the horizon once these drought conditions finally taper off. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Bill Dodd.